Namaste. Welcome to Vishwa Yoga. My name is Vishwa. Today I will talk about the core Tantra philosophy. This philosophy is the foundation of both Shaiva and Shakta Tantra. So to make it easier, I have divided this Shiva Shakti philosophy into three parts. As you know, Shaiva tradition has three main philosophical approaches, but Shakta tradition uses just one. As you also know that Shakta tradition formally sprouted from non-dualistic Kashmir Shaivism. So to convey the core philosophy, I will use the common non-dualistic approach. So in the first part, which is this one, I will focus on Shaiva philosophy or Shaiva Darshana with the focus on tattwas, which is common between both Shaiva and Shakta philosophy with some minor differences. In the second part, I will dive into Shakta philosophy or Shakta Darshana using the foundation of Sri Vidya school. And then in the third part, using both, I will focus on answering the ultimate philosophical questions. I'm assuming that you have already watched my previous videos on Indian philosophy. If not, then I suggest you to watch them first to have the foundation. I will also add some important video links in the description. So, what is my primary source? My primary source of this Shaiva philosophy is based on the text Prativigya Hridayam, which means the heart of recognition. It belongs to the non-dualistic Shaiva school called Kashmir Shaivism. This text was written around 10th century by Chaimraj, who was a disciple of great master Abhinav Gupta. In just 20 sutras, he explained the essence of the philosophy. It is said that before Chaimraj, no other master had conveyed this complexity so skillfully. Thus, the text Prativigya Hridayam is considered like a Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra of Kashmir Shaivism. Hence, it is also referred to as Prativigya Darshana. However, the core revealed text on this philosophy is called Shiva Sutra, which is attributed to Vasugupta, that will help in answering the ultimate questions. To convey the message, I have also used some other tantric texts. So let's begin. But first, about the founder. Lord Shiva is the founder and the first master of this system. Shiva is called the Adi Guru or the primordial master who shared this knowledge with his consort Adi Shakti. As per tantric texts, Shiva and Shakti took a turn to become the source as the teacher and an inquiring mind of a student to share this knowledge and practices so that we human can uplift ourselves from the suffering or bondage and acknowledge our true nature. If you remember from the previous philosophy video, I talked about the 5 faces of Brahman. So all the agamas or tantric knowledge was passed down by the 5 faces of Lord Shiva. Each face revealed a set of agamas or tantric knowledge. Each face is said to have a direction and connected to a Mahabhuta or an element and the power of Brahman. Some sources also mention that each face is connected to a Veda. But in Shakta tradition, the same 5 faces are said to be the manifestation of Devi or Adi Shakti as Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Ishvara and Sadashiva. For the sake of simplicity, I have mapped them together as close as possible. However, some texts may vary but convey the same concept. My goal here is to share this complex subject in the simplified way possible. So these 5 faces are commonly accepted by most Shiva Shakti traditions. However, in some texts there is also a 6th face mentioned which looks downward, called Adhomukha. Some sources connect this face with Shiva's name Nilakantha, with the secret power yet full of compassion. Thus, each face relates to a tantric tradition or lineage, also called Amanya, and each one has a respective deity, though these traditions have changed over time. So now I'm moving into philosophy. If you remember, I talked about tattva. In both Vedic and Tantric philosophy, tattwas are the key principles or elements used in Indian philosophy to understand the ultimate reality. In Vedanta, depending on the school, there are either 1, 2, or 3 main principles. In Samkhya, 25, in Yoga, 26, and in Tantra here, there are 36 principles or tattwas. Though in some Tantric texts, it even expands up to 96 tattwas, but that is beyond the scope of this video. So these 36 are main elements and are grouped into 3 main categories, excluding the ultimate source or absolute, called Atattva or Brahman. These 3 groups are called pure or Shuddha Tattva, pure impure as mixed or called Vidya Tattva, and the last one is impure or Atma Tattva. I will dive into each group and its principle one at a time. Remind you, each tattva can be discussed for hours, but to convey this philosophy in a limited time, I will keep it short and simple. So first, let's start with a tattva, which means it is not a tattva or principle or an element, but the source of everything. It is also called Mahatattva. In Vedanta, it is referred to as Brahman. In Tantra, it is called Chit, Samvit, or Chaitanya, or Paramashiva, or the changeless principle of all changes. It is a formless stage where there is no duality or distinction between a subject and object. This is the transcendental state or ultimate reality. Here, the Supreme Self is observing itself. It is called Prakash Vimarshmaya. Prakash means eternal light, which is the source of all the lights, and that is Shiva. And Vimarsha is the Shakti, the Swabhava, or the essential nature, or the essence, called Sar, of all beings, also called Ananda, or supreme bliss. This Shakti, or the power of Shiva, is like the mirror in which Shiva realizes his majesty or power and beauty. However, in the non-dual state as a Nirguna Brahman, there are no two, thus known as Advaita. But let me remind you, both Vedanta and Tantra use the word Advaita, but the word Advaita or non-duality is defined slightly different in Tantra. In Vedanta, Brahman is only Prakash or light or illumination, pure knowledge or Jnana without any Vimarsha or activity. In Advaita Vedanta, the equivalent of Vimarsha is called Maya Shakti, which is considered as unreal and illusions. But in Tantra, Vimarsha Shakti is real and power of Brahman. But in the unmanifested, non-dual state, here Shakti stays latent or introverted as potential. So this ultimate reality is not only universal consciousness but also supreme energy or power. This all-inclusive universal consciousness is also called Anuttara, or in Vedantic term, Nirgun Brahman. It is the highest reality or the absolute, which is both transcendental and immanent. However, depending on individual faith or inclination towards their Ishta Devata, irrespective of the tradition, a person can connect to their Ishta as the Supreme Brahman, either as a Shiva, Shakti, or Devi in the form of Durga, Kali, Tripura Sundari, or a Narayana as Krishna or Rama. You will see this interpretation as I move into Shakta and Vaishnava philosophy. So coming back to Shaiva tradition, Shiva is considered both the efficient and the material cause of creation. Here, Shakti is manifested by Shiva only during creation and is withdrawn or pulled into a dormant or sleep state or inactive state. Imagine something like a 0-watt bulb at the end of creation or dissolution. But both are always together. Thus, Shakti is realized as manifested or Saguna Brahman, which is not separate from Shiva and cannot be separated. It is like you cannot separate the light from sun, or heat from the fire, or heart from the heartbeat, or reflection from the mirror. So Shiva is the universal pure consciousness and Shakti is universal pure energy, always united and undivided. But we are conditioned with popular image of Shiva and Shakti depicted in the pictures, mostly based on Trinity form. But keep in mind that Shiva and Shakti are referred at a different level in philosophy, have different meaning and interpretation. For example, Shiva at the highest level is Nirguna, without any attribute, totally without any activity, in formless state. But at the Trinity level, Shiva has a different role and form, such as Rudra. So just reminding again for understanding. So in Shaiva tradition, this highest state is simply called Param Shiva, and in Shakta tradition, it is called Adi Shakti or Adi Parashakti. These are two names but one reality. In the state of oneness or absolute, there is no he or she or any duality exist. It is all one. It is like you cannot separate your power from yourself. Can you? Can you leave your power behind at home and take a walk? No, you cannot. When you are inactive, your power is kind of inactive, metaphorically. But it does not mean you don't have power. In the same way, there is no Shiva as Shaktiman without Shakti, or Shakti without Shiva. So when someone says Shiva or Shakti, both are inherently or implicitly present as one undivided couple, like Ardhanarishwara. So in nutshell, this is the non-dualistic Tantra philosophy. So the question is how one becomes two and then many. The text says it is Swabhav, or the very nature of Param Shiva, or the ultimate reality to manifest. The moment when the Absolute spontaneously desires to become many or let go the universe contained within, the Shakti or Kamakala wakes up from the sleep or becomes active. This Kama or desire or will is also known as Swatantra Shakti. It's a free will. The first movement or spanda or vibration that happens in the form of nada or primordial sound expressed as a pranava or om. In Shakta philosophy or darshana, I will talk about Kamakala and terms such as Nad, or the sound from which mantra is sprouted, and the term like Bindu as the point from which the universe manifested. But here, all the words such as Swatantra Shakti, Kala, Hridaya, Spanda, Nada are nothing but the power of Shiva, and that is Shakti herself. All are some form of movement or activity. I hope it is clear so far. So now let's dive into the first group called Pure Tattva. So as the absolute desire to manifest, this desire is the movement quickly manifest into multiple stages. The first 5 elements are called Shuddha Vidya or pure elements, also known as Shiva Tattva. Though I mentioned that Shiva and Shakti are never separate, but for conceptual and philosophical understanding, they are presented here as separate tattva. So in the first stage of manifestation, Shiva becomes the first element as pure universal consciousness. It is also called Chitta or Chaitanya, referred to as a Prakash or a light. Shiva is not an ordinary light, but the luminosity, radiance, the source, the spirit, the cosmic intelligence. Shiva is the subject as well as the power of self-revelation as a Chitta Shakti called Aham or simply I. To understand this better, as Shiva sees his reflection like one sees in the mirror, his true nature is recognized as supreme bliss called Ananda Shakti. This mirror is the second element called Shakti or power of supreme, referred to as Idam or this or the object, Swarupa or Chiddarupani Shakti. So everything that is reflected, seen or experienced due to that light is the Shakti. Thus, as energy moves, it polarizes the consciousness with Aham and Idam, or I and this experience, or subject and object identification experience. So as Shiva sees his true nature with his spontaneous desire called Shakti, the first experience becomes Aham Idam or I am this. But the Aham or I remains predominant, and this stays as a hazy experience. This is third stage or third tattva called benevolent state, Sadashiva, and this Shakti is known as Iksha Shakti or will, which includes the power of grace to reveal the truth. Here both subject and objects are consciousness. In this stage, the desire or idea exists but is not very clear as to what exactly to create or manifest. In the next stage, the experience of the object becomes a little bit more defined, such as Idam Aham, or this is I, or this is me. This is called Ishwar Tattva, or where the knowledge or Jnana Shakti predominates along with power of concealment. It is the state of Unmesh or distinct blossoming of the universe. Ishvara is the dynamic state of Shiva with awakened Shakti, which is equipped with all the 5 powers of Brahman, but stays in the concealed state. At this stage, there is clarity as what to create or what to manifest. In the next stage of manifestation, both subject and object are experienced equally. This is the state of pure wisdom, also called Shuddha Vidya, in which Kriya Shakti or power of action predominates by differentiating and knowing I am I and this is this. This state may be called the diversity in unity. The experience at this stage is between the higher and the lower stage. Up to this stage, all experiences are ideal, more like in the form of ideas. These 5 tattwas are called pure tattva, as the real nature of the divine, but is not yet veiled. At this stage, the power of creation, maintenance, and destruction are ready to take action, as you will see that this universe is nothing but the expansion of the One Supreme. Now, the next 7 tattvas are called mixed tattva or pure impure elements, also known as Maya tattva. The word Maya is derived from the root ma, which means to measure out. So Maya is that which makes our experience measurable or forms a limit. By this power of Maya, Supreme divides, separates, excludes things from each other, including subject and object. In other words, ignorance is seeded here, and thus the duality begins. These elements will reveal the mystery of how Shiva, from a limitless, unbounded, pure bliss state, turns as a jiva or an individual being bound by his play or own limitation of Maya Shakti. At the stage of pure wisdom or Shuddha Vidya, the word this means all this, means the total universe. But under the influence of Maya, this becomes different for different things and everything else. Thus, from here the sankocha or contraction or limitation begins. So, the Maya Shakti, the 6th element, puts the veil on the pure consciousness, which makes the self to forget his true nature, and this creates a sense of difference or separation. It creates an illusion of individuality. From here onwards, the real nature of the Supreme will start to veil, or Supreme is veiled. And each layer starts to add the limitation of universal power or Shaktis. And this is how it happens. So the Maya Shakti has 5 layerings or avarna called kanchuka. The first limitation or first kanchuka is called kala as the 7th element, which veils the power of kriya. Shakti thus limits the universal authorship to limit power and efficacy. So we find a limitation on the action, limit to create, sustain, and destroy. The 6th element is Vidya Kanchuka, which limits our knowledge by veiling the power of Jnana Shakti. The universal Jnana Shakti is omniscience, but Vidya Kanchuka limits our knowledge. The 9th element is Raga, which creates the limited interest or desire by veiling the Ichcha Shakti, which reduces the satisfaction to only particular things. This is the limitation of attachment, like this is my loved one, my family, my property, etc. The 10th element is the time or kal. This layer puts the limitation on eternity, that we are limited with time or lifespan. We refer to this time as past, present, and future. The 11th element is called Niyati. It is the last layering of Maya, which reduces our freedom and pervasiveness, or the Swatantra Shakti, which is regulating the Purusha as what he should or should not do at any given moment. Thus, we are restricted to cause, space, place, and form. Just to reflect and connect back to dualistic Vedanta philosophy, here These 11 elements together are called Purush Vishesha or Ishvara or Ishvari, God or Goddess. This Ishvara in Vedanta is equipped with the power of creation, sustenance and destruction, or as the Trinity represented as Brahma, Vishnu and Rudra, along with their Shakti as Saraswati, Lakshmi and Parvati respectively, along with Maya component. The 12th element is the individual soul called Purusha. This is none other than Shiva in the subjective manifestation of Sadashiva with the experience of I am this, but limited by his own Maya Shakti as an individual subject. Here Purusha is every sentient being, every particle of this creation. This is where Shiva becomes a Jiva, accepting the layers of his own Maya and deluded of his true nature. This Purusha is also known as Anu, which means divinity with limitation. Now, impure tattva. The 13th element is the material world in the form of Prakriti. This is the objective manifestation of the Supreme as Shakti. This Prakriti is also called Shant Shakti, with the genetic constituent of 3 gunas called Sattva, Rajas and Tamas at equilibrium in the beginning, which is none other than the polarization of Jnana Shakti, Iksha Shakti and Kriya Shakti respectively. Prakriti is the root of all objectivity. Thus, each Purusha is the experiencer or Bhokta, and Prakriti is the experienced or Bhogya. The element from 14 to 36 are the components of Prakriti, which are the same as I have discussed in the Samkhya philosophy video. So I would recommend you to watch that video to understand the Prakriti Tattva. But in Tantra, it is called Impure or Atma Tattva. Please keep in mind that some common terms such as Purusha and Prakriti of Samkhya have slightly different interpretation in Tantra. So to understand this concept, you can watch my other videos on the common terms used in Vedic and Tantric philosophy. You can also now see how yoga philosophy is contained within the Tantra philosophy, leading to the same absolute or the universal mind. So these 36 tattvas are foundation of Shiva Shakti Tantra philosophy. Generally, most teachers stop here, but I will go a little further in the coming video to cover some key philosophical terms and concepts used in Shakta tradition and the importance of mantra and yantra in the Tantric tradition. I hope this information was useful to you. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Namaste. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the information, please subscribe, like and share so that everyone else can also enjoy this.